G'day, Bomber fans. It's been an interesting few weeks. The season ended badly. It was just another year of not being good enough as a team. We were going to go into the trade period and look forward to 2025 with a new list. But these last few weeks, this last week in particular, there have been all these stories slowly coming out. Seemingly nothing stories at first, but they're slowly adding up and creating a bit of unrest with the fan base. I'm not trying to be dramatic because there's every possibility that this is just the media doing its thing, but there is a bit of anxiety. There's, I guess, a bit of worry. There is some worry that something is bubbling behind the surface. I've spoken to a few of you guys about this and you feel the same way, so I'd be interested to see how you guys feel. I know that there are some worried about something going on behind the scenes. I guess we'll find out in the next few days if there is actually something to be concerned about with the club. So let's talk about the news of the last 24 hours and how big these stories are. Alrighty, well the day started with typical trade chat. There was still the bits and pieces from that Merrett story being discussed, lots of Jake Stringer talk, but there were two stories late in the night that have me a bit more worried, starting with the big one, and this is weird. This doesn't happen much in the AFL. Essendon have been officially contacted and warned by AFL Integrity over who the club allows in the rooms after a game. This comes as, the quote is undesirable figures, but the official quote is, the club was warned to be aware of a group of associates of recently delisted bomber Nick Hind and Jake Stringer. So this is Mark Robinson reporting this on the Herald Sun, backed up later in the night on Footy Classified. Pretty much this means the AFL saw someone in the Essendon rooms after a game who they believe to be associated with Nick Hind, and these people are bad news, pretty much. That is what's going on. And this isn't something they usually do. The only real public case of this that I can think of is Jake King back in the early 2010s when Richmond were given the same message after it was known that members of a bikie gang were associated with Jake King. This was massive news at the time. It was being talked about a lot. And obviously since retirement, Jake King has run into trouble with the law a bit. So it shows the kind of people that they look out for here. For the AFL to be worried about this, it is fair to assume that they're now worried for similar reasons to what they were with Jake King, and that is what everyone has been alluding to without directly saying. I think what has possibly happened here is some players at Essendon are perhaps friends with people they shouldn't be friends with, and I know that you're not supposed to tell adults who they can and can't be friends with, but these people are, I'm guessing, probably pretty bad news. And it's not just Nick Hind, it appears Jake Stringer is also involved too. So that's pretty much what we know. This is where speculation comes to the table. The AFL were first made aware of this from a Roaming Brian segment when one of the individuals was spotted in the broadcast. That is fact, and what isn't fact is people, well I guess I'm hearing that it's after the Collingwood game, the Friday night win later in the year. I've seen the footage that people are talking about. I wouldn't recognise anyone, but then again, I'm living in a different state, and the only crime I've committed is trying to convince my niece to go for the Bombers instead of the Crows. I would have to get at least a fine for potentially bringing her into a community of stress and disappointment. But anyway, back to the point. It's speculation, but many believe it was some people shown on the broadcast around Nick Hind after that game, and that's how the AFL was alerted to this. But Jake Stringer has been mentioned a few times here. He's close with Nick Hind. They're very good mates, and apparently is connected to the individuals as well. I hate saying, I'm going to stop saying individuals. It feels too formal. I'm going to call them the Bad Eggs. So Jake Stringer is involved in this story through Nick Hind, and they're connected to the Bad Eggs. Some claim this is actually mentioned on Roaming Brian, but I'm not going to just assume I know who the Bad Eggs are because some people are claiming they do. I know who people are talking about. I've seen the segment, but I'm not going to show them or even confirm them to be the ones the AFL Integrity is talking about, because that is not really fair unless we actually have some concrete confirmation. But Jake Stringer is directly tied to Mark Robinson's story as well. He's part of this story. He's friends with the Bad Eggs too, it seems, and this is tied to Stringer's trade story, which is why he's, I guess, a bigger part of this news, despite Nick Hind being the one closer with these Bad Eggs, it seems, which is, it's kind of developed on top of this in the last few weeks. So Eddie Maguire said last night that this has been bubbling for a couple of weeks, talks behind the scenes. Members of the media have apparently been reporting on Jake Stringer's stories and leaving this information out, I guess, until it was made official or something. Not 100% sure, but they have been sitting on it for weeks. No one talking about it seems surprised at all. These stories were released and reported on from different sources in quick succession, and this is often how it happens when the AFL is involved. You can't really report on that part of the competition unless it's official. When the Herald Sun asked the AFL, they confirmed that they had spoken to a player about this, but of course kept the player anonymous. That is enough to confirm the story, at least. And if it is false, it would have been shut down instantly. Now, I don't know if Eddie Maguire is aware of who this individual is. It wouldn't surprise me, if you get what I mean. But he was talking pretty strongly about drugs and drug testing. Not Hind, not Asada 2.0, This is more illicit and the type of drugs that would probably hinder your footy performance. Now, Essendon will release a statement on this today, well, they've been asked to. I'm recording this early in the morning before work, so any morning news I've missed, it's because of that. But this just adds fuel to the fire with Stringer and his trade talk, and even maybe Merrett, who I'm going to talk about in a second as well. So Stringer wants that extra security. The club said you get what you're currently on. We all know that, but it seems like many are now in the line of thinking that part of the reason for the club's reluctance to trust Stringer was because of the friends he was making outside of footy, and that is why many think Nick Hind was also delisted, but also not even given senior game time late in the year despite playing decent footy. And it's apparently the reason news of clubs calling on Stringer has came about, because clubs have just started finding out about this behind the scenes as well. It's happened quickly, so it's hard to know if that reporting is kind of leapfrogging a bit. That's always hard to read, and it's hard to get information right when the media kind of run with their story and connect it to others if there is a narrative. But if that is correct, clubs being worried about Stringer and his relationships, I wouldn't be surprised. Just because of everything that's been coming out lately with his fitness, his professional standards, and now his friends outside of footy. So to sum this one up before I talk about Merrett, Essendon have been told individuals, bad eggs, connected to Nick Hind and Jake Stringer should not be allowed in their rooms. This is very rare. AFL Integrity contacted them, something quite rare for cases like this. Essendon are yet to comment, but probably will release a statement at some stage today. Alright, some more news that flew under the radar, and this is really interesting. Damien Barrett is over this one. He is adding some more smoke to the Merrett story. He claims that the information that wound up with Tom Boris for him to report on the story when he reported on the Merrett interest at first, he claims that information, and I guess the story as a whole, is coming from Merrett's management. It comes from St Kilda releasing their statement stating that they had not made an offer to Merrett. Caroline Wilson backed this up with the information that Graham Allen, St Kilda's list manager, emailed Brad Scott directly, personally, telling him that they were not approaching Merrett. And Damien Barrett now believes that this situation is an attempt for Merrett's management to get the captain on a better deal, increasing his trade value by, I guess, scaring the Bombers into the thought of a potential trade and upgrade on Merrett's salary. Now, this is something you would see a guy, I guess, like Jake Stringer happen with. This is a story you would see with a maligned player or one on, I guess, or in a less secure situation. But for a captain of a club on big money with 3 remaining years on his contract, it is a bit weird for this to be the case if it is, and it has many wondering whether this news is connected to reports from earlier about Zach Merrett talking to Brad Scott about Stringer and Laverty's contract situation, whether or not these stories are connected. Zach Merrett, Nick Hind, Jayden Laverty, and Jake Stringer are all very close friends, that is widely known. They are a little group at Essendon. All 4, by the way, are either recently removed for the list or being talked about this trade period. And remember, before we even knew about any of this AFL Integrity stuff, the trade news, we heard reports that these guys and the clubs were not getting along, not being offered extensions on existing deals. I guess now is a really weird and eerie time in a news story where you kind of sit on information and wonder how significant it is. You know this could easily be something that leaves the club with Jake Stringer if he does exit, but with this and some little whispers about a challenge for David Barham's re-election, and that tied with claims that Essendon aren't leak-free anymore not anymore, but leak-free as they claimed they were to be earlier in the season after those media leaks back in 2022. There's also Essendon's membership price hike. I don't know, there's just lots of these stories going on right now that are really beginning to result in frustration and fear from the fan base. I see it online. Our membership tally dropped 3,000 from last year. You feel like this could all be the start of a boil-over of sorts. It definitely has that potential. We'll see. The next week or two could either be talked about a lot or not much at all. You don't know how big this story is, or I guess what's going on at the club now, if there are actually problems. You don't really want to be talked about this time of the year if you're not playing finals footy, and unfortunately we have a new story every second day. But yeah, I guess that's that for the video, just keeping you guys up to date with the unfolding story. Could be nothing. This could be absolutely nothing, but it could be something. So we'll find out soon. Stay tuned to the channel to hear more about it and other Essendon related news. Lots to talk about right now. Tomorrow I'm posting what I was originally going to post today, a little look into our best 23 and what it looks like right now, so stay tuned for that. Comment down below what you think about this potential story and what videos you want to see from me. That is all for now. Like, subscribe, and go Bombers.